Okay, so, oh great, thanks Emily. Resilience researcher, great. Okay, I'm going to make a start. So hello everyone, and thanks so much for coming to this session. My name's Andy Goldring, and I'm the Chief Executive of the Permaculture Association. The association is an education and research charity which has been going since 1983. And we have a really brilliant network of educators and demonstration sites, or land centres as we call them, and a growing membership. I am joined today by two brilliant speakers and practitioners, both good friends too, and colleagues. Hannah Thorogood runs a farm in Lincolnshire along permaculture principles, is a designer, teacher, amazing mum, and a trained organic farmer. She has transformed a very sorry looking field when she first bought it into a biodiverse and productive system. And according to some London chefs and the Ethical Meat Company, Hannah is redefining the taste of turkey. And I can say from personal experience that her turkey and her hogget is absolutely the best I've ever tasted. So Hannah will be sharing the story of the ink pot with us a bit later. We're also joined by Niels Caulfield, who is trained in permaculture, holistic management, regen ag, and I'm sure many other things as well. Niels has a passion for soil, grasslands, design, and technical detail, I think that's fair to say, and runs some brilliant training, which you can now access online, and does consultancy work. And I don't know if this is public, but I think you're about to start doing some of your own farming soon, Niels, which is super exciting. So, yeah, and I'd also actually really like to celebrate that Rod Everett is here today. Rod is one of the original permaculture pioneers in the UK, working since the 1980s at Baxbottom Farm, inspiring countless students. Rod has really, I think, amazing knowledge of water and water in the landscape, and is doing some really interesting work with local farmers and agencies. And if I was Prime Minister, then basically Rod would be my ministry, be in charge of a Ministry of Water, no doubt about it, Rod. And as I said before, I'm really curious about who all of you are as well. So if you can share in the chat, share your name, where you are, name of your farm or project, or your interest for being here, and that would be really good for us to look at now and also afterwards. So in terms of the session today, we're going to do a quick overview of what is the Environmental Land Management Scheme, at least as much as we know at this stage, and look at how permaculture can provide an effective framework for delivering public goods at multiple scales. So a bit of a quick overview. Then we're going to look in more detail at some design approaches with Niels. Then a practical example with Hannah at the ink pot. And then after each session, I'll just invite you to put some questions in the chat. And at the end of this, when we've done the presentations, we'll then open that up and have as much time as possible for answering questions and some discussion. And then at the end, a couple of minutes, I'll make a kind of an invitation and give you some resources to take away. Okay, so if that's okay and everyone's here and ready to go, I will get cracking with the ELMS context. So I'm going to just make sure I do the right one. Share that. Can everyone see my screen? I hope so. Good. Okay, so using a permaculture approach to diversify farm outputs in the context of ELMS. Bit of an overview. Okay, so the first thing to say is that the ELMS scheme, the key characteristics are it's payment for farmers and land managers, and it will be based on the delivery of public goods like biodiversity and clean air, rather than growing food or owning land. The main strategic objective is to secure positive environmental benefits, with a secondary objective being to reduce negative environmental benefits. And the payments will be based primarily on locally appropriate land management plans. It starts in 2024, or late 2024, and the Countryside Stewardship Scheme that the last schemes will be approved in 2024 and there'll be no further schemes beyond that. And the direct payments will be closed in 2027. So essentially, over a sort of phased period from 2020 to 2024, ELMS will replace pretty much all the other payments that farmers are going to receive or could receive. There are 3 tiers of payments, and one of the objectives is to have increased local involvement, and that's quite broad. That's involvement of farmers, land managers, but also the public in what kind of farming system is needed. So in terms of what are public goods, well, at a very high level, they're defined as clean and plentiful water, clean air, protection from and mitigation of environmental hazards, mitigation of and adaptation to climate change, thriving plants and wildlife, beauty, heritage and engagement. And if you've read the Our Green Future, our 25-year plan to improve the environment document, then you'll know that these have been taken directly from the kind of main goals of the environment plan. So this is very much a part of that wider Green Future plan from the government. Okay, so there are going to be 3 payment tiers that can be accessed. So tier 1 is available to all farmers and land managers, and the focus there is on shifting practice and then adopting them at scale. So as an example, say wildflower margins. Wildflower margins is something that many farmers could adopt quite easily, almost regardless of what kind of farm it is. So it's a new practice for some people to implement wildflower margins in their farm. But because there'll be more wildflower margins across the whole of the UK, certainly across, across England, that means that there'll be substantial kind of landscape scale benefits because there'll be more pockets of wildflower margins all across the landscape. So tier 1 is all about management of nutrients, pests, soils, livestock, water, field margins, cover crops. It's all the stuff you can do on your farm, basically, and there'll be a package of measures that you can use within tier 1. Tier 2 is about locally targeted outcomes, and the focus here is on collaboration and strategic interventions across farms. So 5 different farmers might all have different patches of woodland, and you might look at that together and think, well, actually, if we put a bit more woodland here and a bit more woodland just over there, we increase some of our shelter belts, put in some hedgerows, then we'd create a much more connected woodland habitat across our 5 farms. And that kind of strategic collaboration then creates better habitat. So that would be a tier 2 payment where farmers are working with each other. So habitat creation, flood management, rights of way, for things that typically will require more than one farm. And then tier 3 is the sort of landscape scale change. So it's supposed to be ambitious, strategic, and it's around the creation of new significant habitats. So big woodlands, peatland restoration, wetlands. This is kind of, I imagine this is going to be the White Rose Forest scale work. So big regional scale activities. Maybe not all huge, but there's certainly a very significant number of farmers or land managers would be involved. And although I'm not totally sure about this, I'm guessing these would be taken forward by kind of catchment partnerships, local authorities, maybe some of the big agencies or wildlife trusts, and they would bring together consortia that would develop that kind of tier 3. So, I think basically what the environmental land management scheme means, it is a shift of payments from business as usual to more biodiverse, ecological, carbon sequestering, public friendly farming systems. So it's a shift away from conventional agriculture as we know it, because basically if you've got a huge farm and you've just got a massive monoculture of wheat, you're not going to get any payments. You will not be paid to grow wheat. You get paid for the wheat by the customer. If you want any payments from the government from 2024 onwards, it's because you're delivering some other benefit. So it's a big shift from conventional agriculture as we know it. and I think a move towards the kind of systems that permaculture has been designing for about 40 years. So, I mean, thinking about it, for me, really, permaculture ethics deliver public goods. So in permaculture, we have this ethical framework. It rhymes so that everyone can remember it easily. Earth care, people care, fair shares. And, essentially, we've been focused on delivering public goods since we started. It's at the core of what we do. So in terms of earth care, well, that's clean and plentiful water. It's also healthy living soils. It's about creating clean, contributing to clean air and protection from hazards. It's about adapting to climate change. I mean, originally it was about stopping climate change even happening. It's about biodiversity and thriving plants and wildlife. It's about farm energy systems. It's, our earth care goal has been trying to deliver these public goods. In terms of people care, you can put in there meaningful livelihoods, localized food systems, community self-reliance, beauty, heritage, and engagement. And in terms of fair shares, you've got the kind of economic models which enable the farmer and the landowners and the communities to have an effective economy, but one which isn't disrupting the environment. So, local food systems, cooperatives, CSAs, etc., etc. So, because we've had these kind of public goods goals it's got built into permaculture, we have basically been pioneering, adopting, and popularizing techniques and practices that deliver the ethics, from agroforestry and forest gardens to integrated pest management and local food systems, from the beginning. And these approaches are now of direct interest to farmers wanting to develop regenerative farm systems and deliver public goods. We don't yet know what will be eligible under each tier of payments, but we will be working to increase understanding amongst farmers and policymakers of how permaculture techniques and approaches help to deliver public goods. So, permaculture smallholdings, farms and local food systems in the UK, Europe, and in 120 plus countries around the world, I think, offer 40 years of research and development into what public goods farming looks like. And it looks like Kremiterhof in Austria. This is 1,500 meters above sea level, goes up another 700 meters. It's an energy system, it's a forestry system, it's a livestock system. The biodiversity is huge. Fish, 60 different crops. It looks like Ferme du Bec Heloin in France, which is possibly one of the most profitable farms per square meter in Europe. That's been very well researched now by INRA in France. And yeah, it's incredible the amount of money they make alongside all those other public goods. It looks like Ridgedale Farm in Sweden, where they've taken a monoculture and created a whole series of livelihoods and income streams and increased their biodiversity. It looks like Ragman's Lane Farm in Gloucestershire, with orchards, local food systems, ponds, biofertilizers, very broad popular education process and offering. And it looks like Backbottom Farm in Roeburn in Lancashire, which Rod's developed, with clean water, fantastic food systems and incredible biodiversity, as well as a whole range of different livelihoods. So in summary, I think permaculture offers a vision and a practical pathway to achieve it through a combination of ecological principles pardon me, and a design approach. And this has relevance for both individual farmers looking to diversify and increase public goods, and also for consortia of farmers. And one of the ways to kind of think about this is that, if I go back to a farm that I grew up in Wales, if I go back there now, 40 years later, it still looks the same. If I look at a permaculture farm, even a year or two later, it's different, because permaculture is about kind of working with nature and evolving these systems. So it's a very different approach. Right, let me just see. I think I've just slightly lost my track. Okay, so it's about design, basically. One of the contributions that permaculture makes is that design angle. So in combination with ecological principles, design tools and processes like S.A.D.I, sector analysis, keyline planning, client interviews, permaculture creates a framework for reassessing the potential of a farm and then creating a spatial plan with phased activities. And that process, I think, is going to be really invaluable to farmers looking to increase their public goods. So, you've got an example here of a farm designed using permaculture approach, nice schematic, another one there. Hopefully, I'm going to stop there. I think I've said what I wanted to, and give that sense of overview of what ELMS is, how permaculture fits from the perspective of delivering public goods, and how it does that through a design approach. Niels is obviously going to say a lot more about design, but if you've got any questions about what I've said, please put them into the chat now, and we can answer some of them later. So, Niels, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Okay, thanks. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. So yeah, I'm basically just going to take you through a little bit of a sort of some example designs, really, some field scale designs that I've worked up over the last few years, and put a little bit of context into that, or some detail potentially also into the design process, or the sort of way that sort of I've walked through it, if you like. Obviously it's fairly brief in this 20 minutes or so, but yeah, so as Andy was saying, our kind of like primary criteria here, if you like, for selecting best practice or selecting different measures or interventions are the ELM public goods, and part of the work sort of for us to do basically is see how our existing set or suite of interventions sort of maps on to these priorities that ELMS are kind of bringing through, and I'll kind of try and sort of tease that out as we go through basically, but rather than basically sort of succumbing to a whole bunch of mission drift basically, I think that we already have a sort of fairly broad set of tools that we can use to reshape the landscape, design elements, if you like, that we can place on designs that can address basically some or all of these different public goods basically. So it kind of begins with this idea of what regenerative agriculture for me, this is the framework from which I sort of like work with now basically, and fundamentally sort of regen ag is a synthesis of these different frameworks, existing frameworks basically, that each have their kind of like specialisms and areas where they kind of like have really sort of like drilled down. So each of these has their own kind of like insights and tools that can be brought to the table. So holistic management obviously brings its grazing planning approach and its decision making approach. It has a fairly rudimentary sort of design aspect as part of it. Keyline planning was probably one of the sort of original influences on permaculture, and it's certainly the first iteration of a kind of a whole farm design system. And then permaculture itself, its strength is a very, very broad holistic design approach, sort of taking in sort of both the built environment, energy creation, and also providing ways to be able to combine different systems, for example, grazing systems or pastoral systems, for example, and finding ways to integrate sort of more diverse aspects, whether that be agroforestry, water capture, etc. basically. So I think what's really interesting as well is the kind of the 4 ecosystem processes which underpin regen ag as an approach, have quite close what's it called? Relation to, again, the public goods we were looking at, for example. So, you know, the carbon cycle and the nutrient cycles, you know, they're all to do with clean air and also clean water. And obviously the water cycle, you know, and the understanding of the water cycle, how water is basically cycling through the landscape from rain and ideally through soil, as opposed to sort of running off and creating flooding or erosion issues, for example. But again, I think the sort of take-home message here is that we have these kind of frameworks, we have these insights, these tools basically that we can kind of take off the shelf and apply to a new set of outcomes basically, and that is drawing down funding fundamentally to deliver these public goods. So the principles under which I work come into sort of three main headings. So the whole farm planning principles will be those that I'll be looking at today, and we'll share, in fact I might just do that myself actually, is share a link for the sort of PDF for you to be able to read through these at your leisure. But basically the idea is to create sort of like, you know, a set of kind of pithy or simple kind of suggestions or rules, if you like, that can help to inform your decision making going forward, basically. It's all about sort of identifying what can be done in the short term and what can be done perhaps in more long term, but ultimately sort of defining what your suite of elements would be when it comes to actually sort of making sort of material changes, physical changes to the land and your farm, basically. The next set of principles is very much more to do with the actual management, sort of what you do when, as opposed to what you do where, for example, the kind of physical. So that would be the soil health principles when it comes to predominantly cropping, but also mixed farming. And then obviously in grazing situations, you know, how do you sort of manage pasture for maximum carbon sequestration, soil building, and from it, better water infiltration, etc. So in a way, we kind of like try to build up from the sort of the whole land and what you can do tomorrow and every day of every week, for example, and then build up to the more kind of long-term, more physical changes, basically. But the way that we sort of like bring these together, basically, whether that be agroforestry or other kind of like physical interventions, along with how we manage the land, we can create a step change, basically, in the condition of that land. So sort of how we kind of walk through this is basically by the use of a design process. So we kind of work either as an individual or, you know, with a third party, basically, and kind of break down the work of creating some kind of finished sort of 2D plan, if you like, or design. And that starts from sort of working where you're at now, so doing observation, otherwise data gathering in the survey phase, then taking that data, whether that be soil tests, visual evaluations of soil structure, for example, plant communities, phase 1, biodiversity studies, for example, you know, then we need to take that kind of raw data and sort of push it through some kind of analysis, some kind of filter, basically, that identifies the key points. We'll then use those key points basically as a set of criteria to select or to shortlist interventions that we then take through to the design stage, basically, and through to the implementation. So you can very much think about it as like, you know, phase 1, what's the stage 1 being survey, that's like the kind of the binoculars. You're just looking and you're noting, for example. Analysis is very much the use of the mind. Yeah, so selection, decision making, ranking, prioritizing, all these things basically. And that can be both the physical state of the land, for example. Is it very heavy land? Is it very exposed? Did you have altitude? And it can also be sort of like the enterprise and the people. So is it like a skeleton crew of just a couple of people with only little money, for example, or have you got like, you know, sort of decent budget on an estate, for example. So all of these, basically, these facts fundamentally set the context and the sort of lens through which you're going to make your decisions through. So let's look at some worked examples, basically, to sort of illustrate these points and see potentially if that will trigger any questions later on around sort of how this actually sort of relates specifically to ELMS. And fundamentally, how can we get some money off the government to pay for this stuff that we want to do anyway? I mean, you know, that's the fundamental point here. You know, this is already high on the list, but now we have the potential to actually access some decent, presumably capital funding to implement these works, basically. So these, I think about 3 examples going to take you through. These are all bespoke designs for different contexts and different sites. So the first one is an upland grazing example. So something quite basic to begin with, basically. This is from central Scotland, and they are outwintering cattle on permanent pasture, basically, and they're surrounded by sort of running water, so kind of burns, as they'd call them, basically. So what's our kind of analysis, or what's the response to those kind of conditions? Well, we want to provide protection for that open water in the form of things like riparian buffer strips, and that certainly would be ticking the clean water, clean and plentiful water example. So you're definitely improving sort of water quality, reducing turbidity, and these other sort of unwanted conditions, for example. And we also want to provide shelter for livestock out winter, particularly, and also from storms in the season. So it's a fairly sort of simple design in this case. We've just got like a combination of grid silver pasture, sort of planted on what you might call a sort of like a standard 10 by 10 grid, and then like a network of shelter belts on the field boundaries. Yeah, so you can see our sort of winter winds coming along the valley down the top here, and our summer winds, or our storm winds, coming along the valley from the other direction. So if we want to be providing shelter for outwintering cattle, we're going to need some kind of coniferous planting, and we're going to need something that has like a good growth habit, basically, that doesn't open out at the base and basically just funnel wind underneath, basically. So we need something like a cypress or a similar species to achieve that. Then we can see here, this wiggly line, that's the burn running down off the ridge, off the high ground here in the bottom of the image. So we're going to want to basically protect that area, either just by fencing it out or by actually doing some plantings along there. They both end up sort of producing the same results in different time frames. And we end up basically kind of like delivering our kind of water quality goals there and providing a bit more shelter. So here's an example of just a very simple way to create a riparian buffer strip. It's basically either putting in a permanent stock fencing or ideally temporary stock fencing, but we're controlling access to the stream bank, to the water course, basically, and potentially sort of like cutting off some of these meanders a little bit here. So we're creating a bit of a little kind of riparian woodland as well as a sort of buffer strip, basically. Okay, so the next example to look at then in that case will be slightly more diversified example and a larger example. In this situation, it's a mixed lowland farm. I think it's about 80 acres or something, so not big, basically. And the brief here was, like from the outset, a carbon negative operation. But the site in this case is gently sloping on an island, a fairly small island, so a kind of inland sea, basically, with sort of direct market outputs to rural communities and district heating, because it's in Denmark, basically. So they've already got that kind of infrastructure in place. So the analysis here basically is, to deliver that district heating sort of need, basically putting in sustainable biomass. sustainable, or rather sort of regenerative biomass production, so agroforestry for that, to substitute the sort of kind of wanton hedge coppicing that's going on in that country at the moment, actually, and then also to co-fire that material, ideally, to produce biochar. So we not only sort of got like short rotation coppice with its kind of small footprint, and its carbon drawdown in roots and leaf matter, but we've also got the ability to then recover probably about a fifth by volume of the material that goes into the district heating as some kind of black carbon, a stable carbon. Basically, there will be like a permanent addition to the soil when it's applied. And if we want to upcycle that further, we can also use that as animal bedding, basically. So they're also going to need shelter here, and obviously adopting no-till, arable and horticulture, basically, because, you know, they're supplying to a local market. So kind of three main blocks in this case. So we've talked about the biomass already. So that would be things like hazelnuts, hazel and chestnut, which again can be fruiting and coppiced on something like a 5-year rotation, for example. Utilizing strategies like rotating cover crops that are then mob grazed, potentially then again either using the biomass that's chipped to produce biochar, or potentially also which would be producing some compost or heat directly through the Jeanpin system, which can then again be upcycled and used as a feedstock for beetle larvae, and that produces an excellent high protein feed, basically, for monogastrics, so pigs and chickens, basically. Then sort of in the upper quadrant, where we've got a little bit more slope, basically putting in some kind of key line or sort of slightly off contour planting, and this would be again closer to the road. So in this case, this is where the horticulture block will go, in between these rows of productive fruit trees in this case, and again sort of like rotated with, and probably small scale poultry, and potentially pigs could rotate through there, clearing up crops and manuring, and then otherwise some kind of like sort of no dig market garden, basically, although obviously it's fairly large scale, so we'll probably be looking at more sort of field scale horticulture in this case. And then like the sort of final piece of this would be sort of a silver pasture block, again could be grid planted, slightly higher up in this case. And another sort of thing that's worth pointing out is, zoom in a little bit, kind of we've got living barn. So rather than investing lots of money into, like, you know, redundant infrastructure with roofs and all the rest of it, you know, most livestock don't need roofs, so you can save quite a bit of money there, basically. And I wouldn't be surprised if you can even get some ELMS money to put the plantings in for that. So again, we've got shelter belts on the periphery, sheltering from those what's it called, those sea winds, and in this case a tree nursery and a wet system to deal with any runoff and to upcycle any of the sort of like produce. So if you're going to be planting a whole bunch of agroforestry, there's an indication for putting in either a holding area or a propagation area to produce your own name variety trees and woody plants, which you can then basically sell on to the local community with that excess capacity as you sort of like get into the later phases. Okay, so yeah, just to sort of kind of highlight one of the whole farm planning principles. This is number 10 on this particular example. So integrate trees for productive outputs: livestock browse, wood chip, fruit and nuts, timber and biomass, and obviously the biochar as well. So the final example we'll look at here is an example from the Kent Downs, so a grazing operation on heavy clay with very low rainfall, pretty much only falling in winter. I think Kent this year may have had 50 mil since February, something like that, maybe 100 mil since February. It's officially a brittle or sort of semi-arid environment, basically. And obviously with these kind of soils, very poor infiltration as well. and the historic management as well. So issues with boreholes running dry and little or no grass growth in the summer, basically. So the response here is to drought-proof the farm, fast-track the soil building, increase that grass productivity, and in this context, irrigation was proposed. So, you know, it's a decent budget here. So kind of try to evolve a system that would not require any irrigation, basically. So the first thing is basically to be putting in a key line system, so ditches and mounds off contour that are moving any water that will be moving across the land, predominantly in the winter. So rather than it all funneling down into this valley down here, we are able to redirect that water out and onto the ridges, basically. So redistributing water from the low ground to the higher ground, in inverted commas. And we're also increasing the total amount of absorption or infiltration by slowing that water down. That would also then be sort of paired with subsoiling, again, following this same pattern. Again, these are all parallel rows. And then we can be using the output from the sweet chestnuts and hazel, for example, to be producing wood chip for mushroom growing. Again, potentially using some other sort of inputs, potentially, again, because they're looking to fast track the soil building and looking to fast track the production. So potentially looking at biomass spreading of just wood chip or composted manures, for example. And then utilizing the coppice woodland that's on site, again, potentially for biochar production, potentially just in pits, you know, so very low tech option. And again, that would either be used for bedding in the living barn and then applied through spreading onto the field, or could be used directly, basically. So I guess the only other thing to mention here is that living barn here at place 2 would be matched or paired with a wastewater treatment system. So something otherwise known as a wet system. So any of the runoff, the leachate would be caught in this planting and then usable. Well, then basically the produce, the output from that would be more biomass, basically. So I think probably the final thing to sort of mention about this is the opportunity then to basically create what we'd call an anthrosol. So people talk about sort of terra preta, for example, but the Plagan soils from the Netherlands, where they produced, well, you can see here, about sort of 2 foot of black soil, basically by management. So that's kind of our sort of objective here. Okay, so the conclusions for this little session basically is that fundamentally we believe that the ELMS priorities are pretty closely aligned to those of the regenerative agriculture, and that the design frameworks that things like permaculture offer provide what can help to deliver these public goods and hopefully draw down funding for these works. So I'll just come out of this and then we can hand over to Hannah, I think. So thanks for that.
Great. Before we go to Hannah, just again, I'd like to encourage, if you've got a question or a thought that you'd like to direct to Niels, please put it in the chat. So just going to give people a minute to have a think about the question, and then we'll come to them towards the end of the session. But also we might be able to do some responses as we go. Okay, so Hannah, would you like to share your screen?
Yes, I would. Just to start off, I've been having some lovely technical issues. I've been thrown off 4 times off Zoom whilst Niels was talking. So it's the joy of very remote internet access in Lincolnshire. So can everyone hear me?
Yes, but maybe turn off your video.
Neil's saying he can't hear me. So
It's okay.
Oh, it's
anyone
okay.
else
It's just if you turn your
have an
video off, you
opinion as
might
to whether
get
they can
more
hear me or not?
bandwidth.
Okay, cool. Okay, all right. Okay,
But we can hear you.
okay. I'll see how we get. Yeah.
If you cut out, Hannah, I'll show one of your videos.
So if I do get thrown off Zoom whilst I'm having my presentation, then Andy has a few videos.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So let me stop my video. Okay. So I'm just sharing my screen now. Hopefully that will start working.
Oh my God. This is...
Okay, so can people see my screen?
Not yet. Do you want me to share the screen for you, Hannah?
Yeah, if that's going to work, that
I'll do that.
Yeah,
You just
sorry,
tell,
folks,
you just tell me when you want me to move forward. Okay, so let's go. Ooh. Not that one, sorry, shared wrong screen.
Okay, so I'll start talking whilst we...
the joy. Right, here we go. So, can everyone see that now? Great.
Okay, so I think that's not the first screen.
There we go.
Slide. Can we move back to slide 1, Andy?
We are. That should be slide 1 now.
And is it possible to move back to slide 1?
It is on slide 1.
This lasts. Okay, great. I think I've got quite a delay.
Yeah.
So I'll start and we'll just crack on. So I'm Hannah Farragut. I'm a permaculture farmer and designer, teacher, parent, all sorts of different things. Home is the Ink Pot. It's a permaculture demonstration farm. It's an organic farm. We use regenerative agriculture practices. It's initially an 18-acre field, essentially an 18-acre field, that if it's possible to own land, we own it outright. When I say we, it's myself and my 2 daughters, twin 13-year-old daughters, who it's been their home since they were 3. And we have been renting other bits of land as we've come to grips with the 18 acres. It's been so successful, we're now taking on other bits of land for other people. So we have a number of different landlords and different agreements. We sell meat, wool, eggs, a range of different produce, and we've been here for 10 years. So if we go to the second slide, Andy. So as I said, it's a permaculture demonstration farm, which means so we have utilised permaculture design from the beginning of the field. So you can see some old pencil drawings. I'm a permaculture design teacher and a senior tutor in the diploma system. So all sorts of permaculture design processes and tools have been used on various aspects of the farm, from the physical layout, but also the human layout, the human systems, the decision making. And as Niels has already covered quite a lot of this, and Andy's already covered this, everything within the farm comes under the 3 ethics of people care, earth care, and fair share. So all decisions made are considering the planet, the people, and a fair distribution of resources. We also go through design processes almost in a continuous cycle of observing, analysing, deciding, doing, repeat, go back again. So if we can have the 3rd slide, that would be great. So this lovely photo popped up when Google Aerial View, whatever it's called, updated itself. This field that you can see, the main picture, is the Inkpot field. And 10 years ago when we got here, it was a plain arable field. So I think a question had already been asked about starting from a compacted arable sprayed field. Well, this was the Inkpot. It was very heavy clay. It had been used almost continuously for oilseed rape for years, which is never a good idea anyway. And it was very heavily dependent on chemical inputs. So it was very interesting doing the initial surveying when we got here, because there was virtually zero biodiversity. It was very quiet. And so one of the first things we did, if you look at that main picture of the field, there's a space, there's a dark green area, but there's a space around the edge that you can break habitat, carbon sequestering, and that serves multiple functions. And what I love about this is it really shows the grazing system. So how we graze is we move the flood, so a mixture of cows and sheep, a herd and a flock. We move them on daily.
Oh no, have we lost you? Are you there, Hannah? I think we have lost Hannah. Sorry about that, everybody.
Andy, let's get her on by phone. Just send her the link for like dialing in with her phone, just on the landline. Mobile.
Okay, I shall. Well, Niels, do you know how to do that?
No, because I haven't got access to any of the.
All I've got is a link to copy. I haven't got any of the details to phone into. That's not
okay.
That's not with this. I mean, I could show Hannah's.
You could invite her basically as a host. You could invite her by sending an email, which should have all of the necessaries on it.
Okay, she's back on. You back, Hannah? I can see the name. If you're there, Hannah, let us know. Otherwise, we could show the 2-minute video. Actually,
let's just do that now. Let's do that.
I think that makes most sense. Okay, great. Let's go to the technical. Let's go to the video. Oop. Okay, that's ready.
Yeah.
Oh, are you back now?
Yeah, I think show video.
Okay,
now.
show video. Fine. Yeah, I'm just now trying to catch up with all the different screens on my. Shall I share video?
Yeah. I'm
okay.
here, but show
Fine.
the video anyway.
Hello, so I'm Hannah Thorogood and we're at the Inkpot Permaculture Organic Demonstration Farm in Newcastle. We're standing in with the turkeys and we've got 200 turkeys here. They are 12.5 weeks old now. They're a nice mixture of all sorts of different traditional breeds of turkey. And what we do with our turkeys here is they graze amongst the young trees, as you can see them here behind me. The turkeys get moved on each week, so it's a little bit like mob grazing, but for turkeys. And what they do is lovely, because they're our woodland managers of the farm. So they went into this area today, and you can see that there's lots of plants and herbs and flowers for them to eat in here. And as soon as they come into this space, they start pecking and eating, and they eat the insects, they eat the seeds, they eat berries off the hedge. And also, of course, whilst they're doing that, they fertilise. And so they trample down the things they don't want to eat, but they also poo. And that poo is fantastic for the soil, but also for the trees that are growing up around us. So they're actively sequestering carbon as they're doing this. All that organic matter and nutrients is going into the soil and building soil. We then move them on after a week of being in one area, so the area gets to regrow beautifully. We've been doing this around the edge of the field here at the Ink Pot for a number of years now, and the trees have grown phenomenally because of it. They're growing lovely and strong and beautiful, and the diversity in this area has increased year on year. So at certain times of the year you come through and it's alive with insects, butterflies and birds. And so we'll be working with the turkeys throughout the rest of the year, moving them on each week, going all the way around this 18-acre field and getting them nice and ready for Christmas.
Okay. So Hannah, are you back in, or do you want me to just go through the last slides for you?
I'm currently here, if you can hear me.
I'll share my screen again and you can
great.
carry on where you left off.
Okay, so we were looking at that photo of the grazing, and basically it was, and it's basically showing the recovery rate that I use with the FLIRD. So they get moved on daily, but they have a 3-month recovery period. So you get this lovely dark green fresh grass that they're going into, and that's what really sequesters the carbon. Using stuff like the protocol of ELMS, that would really tick boxes on stuff around the clean air, livestock management, pest management, because the animals are always going on to fresh grazing, which means the worm burden is very, very low. So it's only when the animals go into a bit of set stocking, where they have to stay in one field for a period of time, that they ever have any issues with worms on the daily moves. That never happens. So we can really cut down on all chemicals. There's no chemicals used on the farm at all. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, Andy. Okay, so clean and plentiful water. We have a couple of rainwater reserves across the farm, and that manages to meet all the needs of the farm. So no tap water is ever used in the vegetable gardens, in the forest gardens, or for the animals. And so that we're talking about 150 sheep, 11 head of cattle, 200 turkeys, 50 hens. That's a lot of animals that never have tap water. So our water usage is apparently the same as a 2-person flat in a city, which is quite interesting, I think. And it has a high level of resilience, because we are responsible for our own water. So we've had some pretty extreme weather conditions in recent years, as I'm sure you're all aware of, and we've not run out of water, and we've managed to capture a lot of the water. The soil itself holds so much water because the soil structure has improved so much, and the root penetration has improved so much, that we don't get runoff. There's only ever runoff where there's something gone wrong somewhere. I just wanted to explain the picture of the cow in the pond. The animals don't normally have access to the ponds because they like to stand and wee and poo in it, which isn't great for water quality. However, we've got a number of resilience designs into the farm, and one of those is when we have extreme weather conditions, and cows in 30-degree heat and over get really hot. And so what I tend to do in that extreme weather is to open up the daily grazing, and they can get to where they need to be. And the cows really like going for a swim on hot days. So I can identify with that. Okay, next slide, please, Andy. Okay, so improving biodiversity. It's incredible. Like I said, when we first got here, the field was really quiet. There was no diversity of plants. There was some the field had been sown some very cheap and poor grass, not even a mixture insects, so there's very little bird life. So we planted the 3,000 trees. We oversowed with a diverse pasture mix. We haven't used any sprays. Peaceful. It's very noisy. It's now in summer. It's not safe to walk across the field barefoot because you're going to tread on a bee and get stung. So that's been a fantastic thing to see. And the biodiversity is improving year on year. So we're getting species arriving, plant species that we've never planted, that we've never sown. We have all sorts of lovely plants and birds of prey. And this year we've had an embarrassment of fungi. We've had, I think we're on to 8 different types of mushrooms and fungi that we've spotted just across the field now. And this year, which has been fantastic. Okay, next one, Andy. So our produce, because we can do all these amazing things, but it can also be a bit of a hobby farm, you know, if you're just kind of creating all this wonderful habitat, but are we actually producing something? Can we create a living off it? And what's lovely now is, yes, we can. You know, it takes a few years to set up, to get going, to develop your customer base. But we're basically selling everything we produce and more. I need to update the website and put some brakes on things, because I get these little PayPal notifications telling me that I've just sold something that actually we ran out of a few months ago and won't have any till next year. And people are loving what we're producing. So we've got multiple Great Taste Awards. We're an official Great Taste producer. We, embarrassingly or annoyingly for the local veg producers, we keep winning the local veg show, and they're getting a bit annoyed about that, because, you know, we're that weird organic farm and we're not using any chemicals. And so yeah, I've got quite a few little red certificates around the place. What I really like is we've got very high customer retention. So if you just look at the customers for our turkeys, say, they come back year after year. And actually, if a turkey customer doesn't come back one year, they're normally the ones that get in contact with me to apologise, because they're having to go and have Christmas with Auntie Sue or something who doesn't like turkey, and they're a bit annoyed about it. So it's very sweet. And one thing that I think is a true mark of how well the animals are kept is that we have lots of veggie and vegan customers, which may sound a little bit strange, but we have vegans. The vegans who do this admit that they're not the best of vegans, but they eat our eggs, because they're vegans who will buy our meat for their family members and say, look, if you're going to eat meat, eat this meat because of the way it's being raised. But it's also beneficial for the environment, as well as got very high animal welfare standards. So, okay. So that's our produce, and I think that's the last slide. Yeah, so if you want to know more, we also have some videos on YouTube, but have a look at the website. The main thing I think would probably be to follow us on your choice of social media, because I try and post every day from the farm, and it's posting a variety of different stuff, trying to give a real kind of realistic insight as to what happens on the farm. So sometimes it's techie, sometimes it's cute. So, okay, so I'll hand back to Andy and we'll see what questions arise.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. Thanks everyone else for sticking with us and keeping that going. So really good. So we've actually got a good amount of time now for some questions, and so why don't I just invite you to post any questions you've got for Hannah, and then when we've got all those questions in place, we can start to answer some of them. So I think, Rod, you've been keeping an eye on questions. So is there anything there that we could start with?
I've got one from Hannah to Niels. Have you tried mapping the potential ecosystem services that would exchange through your designs?
No, is the answer.
Yep.
Did you want to have a bit more to chat about that? What kind of things were you thinking? What kind of like an equivalent to like kind of a heat map or sort of a GIS kind of?
Yeah, I think so. Because I know you mentioned like the clean water and things that would have been produced by the design implementation. I'm just wondering, because it's tricky though. I was thinking in terms of ELMS monitoring, but we don't know what the monitoring is going to look like. So if they're talking about ecosystem services, you would assume that they'd want to see some sort of, I don't know, map
Yes.
to say where they are. I know the Land Management 2.0, they've got the Land app, which does exactly that. So I was just wondering if you had tried that at all, really.
Yeah, that's a good question. The Land app is the one that I haven't really yet got to grips with, actually. But it does look really interesting what they've been doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, most of the land agents that sort of like have got their sort of. Andy?
Yeah, so just Bob, when you finished, I've got something
okay.
else to add on the Land app.
Yeah, most of the land agents that are sort of keeping up with the curve are definitely using it, for example. Yeah. In terms of monitoring, what I use predominantly is Soil Mentor. So that's like on farm, farmer-led monitoring, basically.
All right.
And that definitely does kind of GPS point locations. I'll put the name in here, Soil Mentor.
Yeah, that'd be good. I've not heard of that.
And actually, predominantly, certainly when working with clients and students, we get people to work with field margin currently. Okay. So it would be interesting to see what kind of overlays or sort of output. Well, there's very little outputs that can be done from that. So I think some kind of protocol that gets sort of handed down would be useful, actually.
Yeah.
But presumably, yeah, you're right. Once you've been like had ELMS agreed, you're going to have some maps generated either by the farm or by the sort of agent, basically, who's writing that up. So yeah.
So in terms of Land app, it's interesting there just to note that Tim Hopkin, who set it up, Tim did a permaculture design course with Aranya, and then did some work with Darren Doherty on the Regen Ag course down at Cowdray, and basically thought we need a way of mapping all this. So he set up Land app in effect to make it easy to do permaculture designs, although it's become much bigger than that. So it's an interesting kind of way that it's come around, and he's involved in some of the test and trial works on ELMS. He was certainly involved in the LWA horticulture trials that I was involved in too. And we're linking the Land app to the UK HAB codes, and looking through the UK HAB codes, we've now proposed annual polycultures, perennial polycultures, and mixed polycultures, and a permaculture designed cropping as UK HAB codes. So we'd be able to at least link some of those kind of land cover classifications into the land mapping that farmers do. So yeah, and I'm not entirely sure how the Land app links to the ecosystem services, but it certainly links to all different habitat types, and we're trying to extend them to include some of the more polycultural type approaches that permaculture takes.
Right.
There was a question from Victoria. How can we support local landowners to start to make these transitions now without losing too much of their subsidies?
Who wants to pick that up? Niels, Hannah, or me? Or you, Rod?
And I certainly know it's been a problem with the local farmers for trying to get them to do flood management work, where we can give them a grant now, but some of them are quite reluctant to take that in case they get more payment with ELMS. So that's been a sort of holding back point. And we will have whenever it is, on the 7th, the natural flood management in woodlands. Chris Utley is the main person from the Environment Agency looking at the ELMS of the flood management. So he's quite clear about, it's really good, his presentation on what he thinks is going to support, and he's the person writing it, so hopefully that will be
right. Okay, that should be good then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I think it's, in some ways it's tempting just to say it depends, I mean, I guess it depends on the kind of practices that people want to bring in. I mean, there are some practices where you might lose subsidy. I mean, certainly we've been very slow in England to take on things like agroforestry. And there's been a time when planting trees could actually reduce your payments. But I think there are many different practices which won't reduce your payments, but they could certainly increase some of the benefits of the on-farm benefits that the farmer might have. So, you know, the way you do your soil management, or the way you rotate your cattle, or the way you deal with your field margins should actually have benefits in their own right, which would add to the profitability of your farm over a period. So, yeah, unless the practice actually actively takes away from your subsidies, I mean, I think it's worth looking at what the benefit is of that particular practice in its own right, in terms of achieving the goals that you've got for your farm. Anyone want to, Hannah or Niels, add to that?
Not specifically.
No? Okay.
I think one of the key thing, one of the interesting things at the moment is things like the subsoiling along the contour that Niels was talking about, is whether the beneficial effects of that can actually be measured in a way that ELMS recognises.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of farmers will, a lot of the sort of intensive farmers will be trying to make it as not allow that. I don't know.
But it's very interesting again, because you know, Marina O'Connell down at the Huxham's Cross in just near Totnes, there's her farm there, Apricot Centre, just been in operation now for about 4 years. When they took that land on, the soil was in really poor state of repair, and they measured their soil quality quite rigorously across the site. They've done their permaculture design. They've put in a range of different measures. One of the measures was about really good cover crops. They use biodynamics, but they've done the keyline subsoiling work, and the benefit they got just in terms of the increase of their own crops made that worthwhile. So again, they haven't lost any money from any subsidies for doing that work, but they've gained money by having bigger crops, you know, and a much better retention of water, which has led to their, you know, better yields. So again, I really think it is worth going back each time to the actual practice itself and what the benefit might be beyond subsidy, you know, the benefit in terms of increase in yield or water retention.
Just add a piece here. I know one of the things is they're trying to develop is a sort of network of advisors around the country who can help people get into ELMS, and that really might be a strong role for permaculture design work. If we can get into the, you know, being certified, whatever that means or will mean.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be a future avenue.
I agree. I was going to say, if people want to turn their video on and kind of engage with a discussion, they'd be very welcome, because it'll probably feel more engaging if we're kind of got some faces going on, and we can sort of see each other's body language and you know, get a bit of discussion going. It doesn't just have to be, you know, us experts at the top. If you've got a comment to make, then please do bring it in. Yeah, and that's right, Rod. I think the advisory roles is really important. I mean, I know some extremely skilled people like Niels and Hannah and Marina and yourself that I think would really add so much more value to the ELMS process than the government yet realise. I think our vision of what an integrated farming system could look like is, you know, probably 10 years ahead of where ELMS is at the moment. Yeah. So if we can come into the system and help the system to learn, then hopefully we can speed farming along towards a much more integrated agroecological, localized, you know, approach more quickly.
Yeah.
So any more questions?
Yeah, I'll just give this one from L. I'm not sure L means, what is it, Louise Carter? L Carter, anyhow. All fascinating presentations, thanks. Sorry I've missed this so far, but I'm interested to hear more about your thoughts of connecting these permaculture design practices with ELMS framework. For example, ELMS is a mechanism that relies on payments for incentivified, which will not be enough to bring farmers and land managers across to really transformative practices that are fully integrated into the way permaculture proposes. So what would you like to see in the policy framework and the ELMS mechanisms that support the rollout a single farm and maybe cooperative land management arrangements, which would take farms to the point where they could actually benefit from the payments ELMS will offer for all these public goods. There seems to be a missing part in ELMS, which is connected to extension workers.
It's a very good question. I'm not sure I have the perfect answer about the policy we'd like to see. I mean, for each of the tiers, there will be, as we understand it, there'll be a kind of basket of measures which farmers can adopt within each tier. So to a certain extent, it will be a tick box, you know, we'll do wildflower margins, we'll do hedges, we'll do, you know, change the way that we spray our fields, etc. So it will be a bit of a checklist kind of approach. I think, as we were saying in the last question, the real potential will be when it comes to developing those land management plans, which I think are going to be fairly central to how payments are made. You know, I need to know more, but I think that land management plan process is a kind of key part of it. And so part of it will be about how can we get some permaculture advisors signed up so that they could be helping people to develop their land management plan with that extra support of the permaculture design framework. And then, yeah, I guess we work with people making those payments to try and get the system to learn. But I'm not sure I've got a completely finished answer on that, really. We still need to learn more. But maybe El Carver could respond, or Mark, you could come in. I see you put your hand up.
Yeah, just talking about the land agents and having worked with them in many different ways, woodland and stuff, I'm wondering actually, realistically, whether we should be trying to get permaculture into land agent offices, because I don't think they're going to let go of their client lists and stuff like that. It's going to be really hard for us to get in there. So either we buddy up with the ones we know, or somehow we have to actually start to work with land agents and get them to become more aware.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
May I just jump in? Can you hear me? This is El Carver. Hi, I'm Louise. Thanks so much. I'm really learning a lot. I agree. There probably isn't an easy answer. I think it was just recognizing that there's a lot of research going on about harder to reach farmers, and you know there's this false assumption that just by offering payments is going to sort of be the mechanism that will enable people to transform their land practices. All of this conversation about agents and extension workers is vital. But what I would just say is I am actually doing an evidence review for Parliament at the moment about sustainable land management, which will be for the parliamentarians to use to hold government to account. And it'd be really wonderful to include your views directly in that. And so if you could just pop your email addresses, if you wouldn't mind, and I can contact you after, and we can maybe have some kind of research exercise that can directly import some of the things we're exploring into that review. So yeah,
great. Okay, I mean,
I'll put my email in.
Put your email address in either a private chat or publicly. That's great.
Okay, and for anyone else too, if they're interested in being involved, please just email me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That was one thing I was going to add at that point, was actually it's really important to actually find out where those channels are to get into people who are making those decisions about ELMS. So it's like Chris Utley, sort of having personal conversations with him, he sort of added some things into the flood management techniques that he hadn't thought about before. So it's really key to feeding in at this stage before it's all set in stone. Yeah. Okay, great. Any other questions in the list, or any other questions out there? There was one question from Jane about how far away would local farms be? How close to get a synergistic effect? I don't know. In terms of that tier 2 payments, I presume that's about tier 2 payments. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've been involved in the Land Workers Alliance test and trials around horticulture, which is where most of my ELMS knowledge comes from, and I've done some other research. But I couldn't claim to be the expert on ELMS. So I don't know whether farms would need to be contiguous, whether they'd all need to be next to each other or not. Yeah, and I think this is where I guess it's going to be a number of different mechanisms that will make the positive change. So, for example, Natural England have their farm facilitation networks. I think they're growing in number, the farm facilitation networks. So a useful step, I think, in a locality is to see if there is a facilitated farm network in your area.
And the first step would probably be to get farmers to join that, because then, you know, at the Oxford Real Farming Conference, January this year, there was a good presentation from Natural England, and they're very, you know, sympathetic actually to the permaculture approach, the guy that runs that. And what they were finding was that this first phase of the farmer facilitated farmer networks has really been relationship building. And people go and visit each other's farms, they see what everyone else is doing, and they ask questions. And based on those relationships, you can then go another step. And that might be to open up opportunities for discussion around, well, actually, you know, I know you like to grow a lot of wheat, but what about this bit here? Could we do something there? But there was a presentation I was involved in yesterday or the day before from the Nature Friendly Farming Network. And Neil, the guy there that runs that, his name will come back to me, was saying that they were doing quite a lot of satellite imagery of their sites. And the satellite imagery identifies the parts of your field which are really productive and the parts of your field which are actually losing you money. So you look at a conventional field of wheat, 80% of it might be fantastic, 20% of it might actually be a drain on resources, and it probably better turning it into woodland. And you can get that now from satellite imagery. So I think it's this kind of combination of the soft skills, getting to know your neighbours, visiting each other, building those kind of actual, you know, basic human friendship type things, linked to some of the kind of high-tech satellite imagery, understanding actually how is your land performing, so that you can then make good decisions about, well, if that 10% of the field isn't actually providing any income, but it's actually a drain on resources and it's causing nitrogen problems, then yeah, maybe that's an area where we could put the woodland in. So it's a combination of factors, I think.
There's a comment from Ruth Starr-Kettle. Just to let you know that there's a plan for many of the advisors to be working in AONBs and national parks. That's one of the things we talked about in the discussions last night, was really areas like Cumbria seems to have a good network of advisors, but North Lancashire doesn't. So it's actually sort of finding out which areas aren't getting the farmers connected, and really trying to get the farmers connected into groups that are working with a much wider thinking process than just beef or sheep. It's actually, you know, bringing in those networks, making them a lot wider.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so any other?
There's one point from Hannah Field. There's many small farms at risk of being lost due to the loss of the BPS. There's no confirmation of how a small piece of land will be supported within ELMS as well. Interesting to think about not needing to rely on subsidies depending on practices used, e.g. with lower inputs.
So as far as I'm aware, the threshold of land that you need to be managing to qualify is lower under ELMS than it was previously. So it does mean that more small holdings and small farms will be eligible than previously was the case. So actually ELMS, I think, will provide better access to government funds than previous payments, because there's a smaller amount of land will qualify. And I genuinely think that because it's going to be about the public goods rather than growing food, this is sort of slowly tipping the balance away from just owning lots of land and being a big monoculture farmer with producing lots of wheat. Actually, it's a shift anyway. But certainly the smaller land parcels will qualify. Stephen, why don't you come in, because you will undoubtedly know much more than I do on this.
Well, not necessarily, but we've been involved in tests and trials. I haven't, colleagues have. My concern is that what we've seen from DEFRA with schemes previously is a lot of good intention. The staff are very good. A lot of the people we work very closely with in civil service are excellent, but the resource I'm concerned that there isn't enough budget. And one of the things they've said, tier 1 is going to be easy access. So I think you're right, Andy. I think generally speaking, the intention for a shift is there. The 5 hectare minimum, I think, has been completely withdrawn.
Oh, really?
And that actually was one of the bad things of the CAP.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
But I'm concerned that tier 1 will be income forgone, which is what we have at the moment. So although you won't get paid for just having land, you will get paid for doing environmental stuff instead of food. So it's where those trade-offs are. Then you go to tier 2 and 3, which seem to be more like some of these existing flood management area, catchment area type of things. So with regard to the question on how local and how close, I think landscape scale, as long as you've got enough weight of people and acreage or hectarage, I think that would be okay. But it wouldn't all need to be contiguous. We have talked to DEFRA about this. That I don't think they've made a decision. I don't think they know.
Okay.
I'd be interested, Louise Carver, what the timescale is on any further consultation, because we've engaged in consultation a lot, and I know that the DEFRA team are, they're having to use AI surely to go through reams of responses, whereas the people here need to be able to plan for, is it 2024?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Steve. Hannah, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, hi. I've given up on the laptop and come out on my phone and actually got a much better connection, so I can join in a bit better. She says probably before being cut off again. But I wanted to just add a little bit to the kind of a couple of warnings, I guess, of kind of all waking us up about having any subsidies from the government. If we want to get to truly sustainable farming and resilient farming, it's something that isn't dependent on any kind of subsidies, and we've not used any subsidies at the Ink Pot for a number of years. So the ELMS will be a lovely gift if it comes along, but I think having seen the evolution of organics in this country for the last 20 odd years, a lot of big farmers jumped into organics because they looked at the premiums, and it kind of watered down the quality a little bit of organics and the true intention of it. So I think if you want truly resilient farming, build your business plans and your farm designs without ELMS, without any subsidies.
Yeah.
And subsidies that you do get will be icing on top, because money is always an issue around farming and trying to put in big infrastructure. But there are creative ways that you can get funding, and good customer bases will help you with things. I think another little warning around it is with all the COVID stuff. I saw a headline recently talking about the potential of dipping into the environmental countryside plans that DEFRA had for COVID funding. And so we're in a very vulnerable position. ELMS is lovely, but I think we best not bank on it.
No, sure.
I don't think, we might be one of them to go.
They might decide that by 2024 there is no money for farming.
Exactly.
That's absolutely possible. And I think that goes back then to a really important point, which I think sort of came up earlier, which is that, look, we're in a climate and biodiversity crisis of unprecedented scale. Any farmer now or land manager now that wants to make a change can. We've got great information. There's some brilliant examples. Neil's demonstrated. Neil's has been developing a whole series of kind of practice cards. The kind of alley cropping, etc., etc. The range of practices available to farmers to farm profitably in a biodiverse way and fix carbon. It's all there, and actually, in the long term, it makes huge business sense for a farm to go regenerative. If you want to be in farming in the future, if you want to be able to grow crops, you're going to have to make sure your soil's good quality, your water's there, and you've got a biodiverse system. That's just a fundamental requirement of farming. So, you know, I don't think this is about this. For us, ELMS isn't about, oh, let's just get lots of money out of government. It's just, is this another way that we can basically bring people into a kind of more regenerative, ethical framed, ecological style of farming? And, you know, is this another way to support that? But ultimately, the Permaculture Network has demonstrated, and a lot of regen ag farms, that you can do it without subsidy. In fact, you know, just go for the goals that you've really got, and then if subsidies help, that's great. If they don't worry. Right, Stephen, and then anybody else will ask a couple of questions.
Sorry, just I agree with Hannah on, and Mark has agreed on the chat with her on that. Don't wait for subsidies. No. But what I would say is that whole idea of landscape scale, regional identity, people working together, that's the way forward, so that people can support each other. I've seen farms that are now much more resilient than they were 20 years ago. It's been a bumpy road for them, but they've made it work by improving not just their soils, but their trading relationships. Yeah. And those are key.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Very much. That sort of building localized food systems, the supply chains, the connections. Yeah. Most of the permaculture farmers I know at the moment are saying that they just can't sell anymore because everything is sold, and it's all sold locally. They've got queues of people wanting more. People get to know their local farmer. If they like what they do, they want to keep coming back.
I've just put in the chat, we're doing a session in this conference in this slot next week on Northern Farming Food Network.
Ah, great. Okay, fantastic.
All be welcome.
Okay, well, look, what I'm going to do quickly is I've got one slide I want to show you, really mainly just to give you some resources. There we go. So in terms of resources, there's an amazing permaculture network and member projects, farms and smallholdings. If you go to our website, permaculture.org.uk, then if you look at demonstration sites, there's the land network. Good examples. There's lots of other great examples as well. Obviously, Landworkers Alliance, the Nature Friendly Farming Network. But you know, if you go to permaculture.org.uk, you can see very much permaculture specific. There's a great permaculture training called the Permaculture-Designed course. We've now got an online course as well. 12,000 people have been trained in permaculture since about 1982. And you know, it's made a substantial impact in terms of what people's knowledge is about what the tools and the options are in terms of smallholdings and farms. There's a bit of an invitation. So on Saturday at 1:30 till 3, there's a Permaculture Curious session. So if you're involved in permaculture or curious, come along on Saturday. Got about 18 people booked so far. Be a drop in. We'll talk to each other, share. And then in 2021, we're really keen to develop what's called a community of practice for the Permaculture Farming Network. So we're going to try and secure some modest funds and then basically create a regular space where people can learn from each other in their kind of journey towards a permaculture style, permaculture inspired farming approach. So contact me if you're interested, or just contact the association. And yeah, we're going to be looking more at how we can develop farm advice. So we're going to, you know, try and work out what's actually involved in becoming advisors within this ELMS process. We've got an online convergence coming up in mid-October. And basically, if you're interested in permaculture, please do join the Permaculture Association. We have really ambitious plans for the next most important decade. And yeah, growing membership base. And I think if you're interested, it would be really great for you to get involved. So there's a few things there that you can do, and I'll put them into the chat for your ease. So I think really all I need to say now is a huge thank you to everyone for coming. It's been great to have you here. I hope that's been useful. Loads of different resources on our website. We've got a knowledge base, regular events, and just an amazing network of people that have been trialing regenerative, amazing farming systems that deliver public goods for about the last 30 odd years. So some really good experience to draw on. So yeah, thank you all very much. Okay, bye. See you all soon.
Good job there, Andy. Sorry I wasn't visible with my camera